report or the student's name. You add the qualifications of the student, and then you indicate where the thesis is submitted and why it is written and submitted. And finally, the page, rather the date. This constitute the title page. I have an example here of the title page for the thesis. So the first is the title of the thesis. For example, effect of coffee banana intercropping on coffee pests and productivity in Elgon region. I think there is a mistake in the word Elgon. When you are writing your title, make sure that there is no error in the words. Mine has an error. So that is the title of this thesis. Thesis by the student is Mugume Derrick. His qualification is BSc Agriculture, obtained from Makerere University. So I abbreviate Makerere University using its official acronym, which is MAK, not MUK. Makerere is abbreviated as MAK. It's not MUK. Then the registration number. For example, the registration number for Mugume is 2021 stroke higher degrees number 2. 02 is the code for our college. Yes. Other colleges have a different number. So each college has a code, and 02 stands for the IS code, and HD is higher degree. And then the specific number, which is 4281U. This one will be followed by why the thesis was, where the thesis was submitted and why it was submitted. So you write that a thesis submitted to the Directorate of Research and Graduate Training. This is where you are going to submit your thesis. And the reason of submitting is a requirement for the award of the degree. So you add that in partial fulfillment of the requirements for the award of the degree of Master of Science in Crop Science. I think it's not crop science, but crop science of Makerere University. You are calling it partial fulfillment because it is not this thesis alone that will give you the degree. You have some results from the coursework. So it is a partial fulfillment of other requirements, and you need it for the award of that degree of Master of Science in Food Science and Technology of Makerere University, in Crop Science of Makerere University, in Animal Science of Makerere University. Please ignore those typing errors, the crops and the science. And that is the format of the title page, and the last line is the date of submission, August 2023. Yes, Emmanuel.
Yes, Prof. On this, it says submitted.
Shirunda Emmanuel has a hand up.
Yes, some people is Prof.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, some people on this title page, this last part, they always write either in capital or small letters. So I don't know which one is recommended. You can
Lowercase or uppercase?
Sometimes it is written in uppercase, then some reports have looked at they write in lowercase. So I don't know which one is recommended or any of the two can work.
I would go for uppercase.
All right.
The other hand is from, don't see the second hand. Emmanuel, put down your hand, then I see the second hand. Yes, Hamidu.
I just wanted clarification. Why did you use BSR Greek mark instead of maybe MS Group Science? I didn't get all of that.
You can't use MSc Crop Science because you don't have that qualification. You only put here the qualifications you already have. And you are now applying for the award of MSc Crop Science. So far, you have only BSc Agric. If you have MSc Agric and MSc Crop Science, you put both there, and then you're submitting the first degree, for example, animal. But what you put just under your name are the qualifications you have already, not what you are going to get.
Okay, Prof. Then the other is it the code for BSR Greek? Isn't it BAGR instead of writing BSR Greek? Are the two appropriate?
No, it is BSc Agric.
Not BAGR.
No, that code is just for other purposes.
Okay.
And it is known only internally at Makerere, in the system of Makerere. But this one is internationally known. If you write BSc Agric, everyone will know that it is Bachelor of Science in Agriculture.
All right.
The BAGR is not known beyond the Makerere. Okay, another hand, yes. Titus.
Yes, Prof. Mine is on the arrangement of the names. In one of the lectures, you said it is usually advisable to start with the first name. So I would expect this to be Derek Mugume instead of Mugume Derek. Does that matter really?
Yes, it matters. The way you are registered here at Makerere follows this order of surname and then other names. That's how you are registered at Makerere University. So we go by that order. Okay, Annette, can you mute or you have a question? When you are writing, there are a number of considerations you have to undertake. One is the language. Pick one English language. At Makerere, we write in English, but there are many versions of English language. There is the African English, there is the English UK, there is English USA, there is English South Africa, there is English Australia. So pick one English language and consistently use it. If you are to use the English of USA, you consistently use it from the beginning up to the end. If you are to use the English of UK, you use it consistently from the beginning to the end. That's number one. Number two, do not use spoken language for writing. There is spoken language and then there is written language. For example, it's instead of it is, didn't, can't, that's. All these are examples of spoken language. But when you are writing, do not use these spoken languages. Use it is, did not, cannot, that is. Please avoid spoken language as used in written language. 3, be consistent with the language. Of course, I am emphasizing it. Be consistent with the units and be consistent with the presentation. The units, I mean units of measurements. And here I give examples. Labor, which is LABOUR, and color, which is COLOR. These are English words, but labor is in English UK and color is in English USA, and that will be an inconsistency. So choose either English UK or English US. Then there are other words like percent, written in full and shortened as that symbol of percent. Don't mix the two. Pick one and consistently use it. We have other areas like acres as a unit of measurement versus hectares, or meters versus feet, or versus kilometers. I advise that you go by metric system, the SIs, rather than these feet and these acres. If you have the measures in acres, you can easily convert them to hectares. If you have feet, you can convert them to meters and become consistent. The use of and thunder, we talked about it. Pick one and consistently use it. But I don't expect you to use thunder within the text. It can be used in references, but not in the other text. So be consistent also on that. On currencies, there are also sources of inconsistencies. For example, you can write the US dollar as USD. You can also write it as US with that symbol for a dollar. For Ugandan money, you can abbreviate it as USH or SHS or UGX. There are different versions. But the version you pick, you should be consistent with that version. In some words like smallholder versus smallholder separated by a hyphen. Pick one and be consistent. Don't write smallholder without space, and then you write another smallholder with space, and then you write another smallholder with a hyphen in between. Be very consistent on such areas. You also need to be consistent in the formatting. Format is very, very crucial because this is the final product you are presenting, and therefore the format must be consistently presented in terms of the font and font size. Be consistent in the font and be consistent in the font size. Don't use different fonts and don't use different font sizes. The indents also be consistent. These come about when you are paragraphing your work. One can choose to separate paragraphs by leaving a free line between the two paragraphs. Another one might decide not to leave a blank line, but indents the first word of the paragraph. Either way is okay, but make sure you are very consistent. Don't leave some one line spacing and then next you just make an indent. No, that is Katogo. Nelson?
Prof, about that font sizing, there are cases or scenarios where we have our tables condensed with work. How do we really have to maintain that? Because there is a way it calls for change of the font in the tables so that they can fit.
Yes. For the tables, if it is a big table, you can be allowed to reduce the font. I guess the maximum font size you are using is 12. Times New Roman, that is the font, and the font size is 12. Now, for the tables, which could be big and tending to overflow beyond the margins and the page, you can reduce the font size to 11. If the table is much bigger, you can even reduce it to 10. But below 10 will be too small. So figure it out by adjusting the font size between 10 and 12. That is allowed. The accuracy and other units of measure, rather the currency and other units of measure, I've already talked about that. Page numbering. Please don't produce a document even if it is zero draft when it is not page numbered. Page numbering makes reference easy. So if your document is not page numbered, it becomes difficult for both you and the reader and the supervisor to make reference to a certain page. So always page your work, page number your work. Be consistent with line spacing. If you are to use a double or if you are to use 1.5, please be consistent and adopt the specification given by the university. I think the university regulations indicate line spacing to use. Word spacing, the space between words should also be consistent. And I prefer that you leave one space between words. Some of you leave two spaces, others leave one space in some cases and then two spaces in other cases. Be consistent and use just one space between words. Also, the spacing between paragraphs. Some give a double spacing between two paragraphs, others give one space, others get a combination. Please be consistent. And the margins, the left margin, the right margin, the top margin, and the bottom margin. These are also specified in the guidelines by the university. And don't squeeze the margins and to fit so many characters on a page. And don't draw tables and figures that protrude outside the margins. Everything should fit within the margins of a page. That last bullet, space at the top and bottom of a page. When you are typing, a paragraph can overflow the page and goes to the next page. That is okay. Make sure that the overflow on a new page is at least 3 lines, at least 3 lines overflowing to the new page, meaning the minimum number of lines at the top of a page is 3. And if it is overflowing from the previous page, make sure that what remained there on the previous page at the bottom is a minimum of 3 lines. I don't know whether you have got me on that.
No, come again.
Not really.
Very clear.
Probably maybe an illustration to work.
I beg your pardon, Prof.
Okay, let me repeat. You have
Prof.
3 paragraphs. You have 2 or 3 paragraphs on a page, right? Paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3 on a page. The last paragraph, which is paragraph 3, is at the bottom of the page. But it has only 2 lines on that page, and the other part of the paragraph flows to the next page. Is that clear?
Yes, that
Yes,
is
that's
clear.
clear.
Okay. What I'm saying, do not allow 2 lines of that paragraph at the bottom to keep there on that page.
Okay.
1 or 2 lines is not acceptable. Minimum 3 lines of that paragraph at the bottom of the page.
Okay, I get you now.
Now, what flows to the next page? Do not allow a minimum of, or do not allow 1 or 2 lines to overflow to the new page. The minimum should be 3. 3 lines should be overflowing to the next page, not 2, not 1. Is that clear?
Yeah, it is clear now.
Okay. So the space at the top and at the bottom of a page, minimum 3 lines, not 2, not 1. If at the bottom of the page you have 2 lines, it's better you take the rest, those 2 lines to the next page. And if there are 2 or 1 line at the top of the next page, try to edit it such that it all fits on the previous page, or add more stuff to make it at least 3 lines. But don't leave 2 lines hanging or 1 line hanging at the top, or 2 lines or 1 line hanging at the bottom of the page. I'm sure it's now clear.
Very clear.
Clear.
Yes, Prof.
It's clear.
Okay. Regarding the use of abbreviations, avoid abbreviations in titles or headings. Try to write those abbreviations in full. And minimize the use of non-standard abbreviations. There are some abbreviations you create yourself. For example, your thesis is talking about poor environment, and that poor environment terminology appears so many times, and you don't want to overwrite it. So you abbreviate it as PE, standing for poor environment. Now, that is a non-standard abbreviation. It is not known widely. So minimize the use of such a non-standard abbreviations. If it is a USD, USD is a United States dollar. That is standard and widely known. That one you can use it. But these others which are non-standard, try to minimize their use. Next, you define the abbreviation in its first appearance. The first time you write, the first time you write a terminology, for example, again, poor environment, and you want to abbreviate it, you write poor environment in bracket PE, and then you can always write PE. But do not write PE and then later that's when you write poor environment in bracket PE. So this abbreviation should be defined in its first appearance. And then avoid such abbreviations as EG, ETC, IE. You avoid such kinds of abbreviations. Try to avoid them as much as possible such that they minimally appear in your thesis. EG can be replaced by, for example, for instance, ETC can be replaced with among others. So you minimize their appearance in your document. When you are writing, we need you to have good writing style. You start writing from the general to the specific, not the other way around. General points first and move systematically to the more specific points. Or you start from a broad perspective and narrow down to a more specific perspective, not the other way around. Don't start with the specific and go to the general. Don't start from the narrow perspective and go to a broad perspective. For example, if you are telling a story about the technologies used in coffee production, you start by giving us a global picture on how coffee is produced. You narrow down to how it is produced, say, on the African continent. You narrow down to how it is grown in the East African environment. And then you come down to how it is grown in Uganda. And then further narrow down to how it is grown in the Mbale. So we have started from the general or broad perspective, and we have narrowed down systematically to a more specific situation. And when you are writing like that, don't tell us about the global situation. You come to a continental situation, you come to East African regional situation, and then you jump back to continental situation, and then you jump again down to the country situation. Meaning you should move systematically without jumping up and down, moving from general to specific, then back to general. No, be very, very systematic. Always try to use simple language. Simple language is highly recommended. You don't have to use those tough terminologies. You are not going to impress anybody by using tough technologies. The simplest language is the most preferred for every reader to understand without going to the dictionary. And writing simple language does not mean that your work is simple. And writing complicated language does not mean that your work is very complicated. No. So this is just a language of delivering your results. So it should be as simple as possible. Meanwhile, the use of correct grammar is a must. That one has no shortcut. You must have the grammar correct. try to avoid long sentences. Long sentences will make one miss the point. They tend to be ambiguous. They tend to dilute what you are talking about. So avoid long sentences. We prefer short sentences. They can be many, but the meaning comes out clearly rather than having a very long sentence which mixes up points. And don't be wordy. Being wordy is one reason that a sentence becomes long. Remove all the words that are not necessary. Why should you have unnecessary words? Remove the sentences that are not necessary, and remove the paragraphs and sections which do not add value to your problem statement and objectives. If they are not adding anything to your problem statement or objectives, what are they for? They are redundant, no value added. So kick them out of your work. Mind the flow of your chapters, the flow of your sections, the paragraphs and sentences. All these must flow. You can't have chapter 2 before having chapter 1. That doesn't make sense. You can't have a section that does not flow with the next section. And the paragraphs the same. And the sentences must be orderly in a flowing story. So this brings us to the point of when it is necessary to start a new paragraph and how it is started, and the length of a section, the length of the paragraph, and when to break a sentence into a new sentence. Because if you don't know how these follow each other, then you are likely to write something that is mixed up. You start a new paragraph when you have exhaustively presented a given point. And when you are moving to a second point, but which is related to what you have already presented, that necessitates starting a new paragraph. There are two issues that you are talking about. They are different, but they are related. You don't pile them in one paragraph. You separate them into two paragraphs, meaning that the two paragraphs should be related, but on different points, on different issues, meaning that a paragraph that neighbors another should not be completely independent. If they are completely different, if they are not closely related, then the story breaks. And even when they would have been totally different, you get a way of starting a paragraph in a style that somehow connects it to the previous paragraph. For example, you can use such a word that now you have written one paragraph, you have discussed your point, you are going to the second paragraph, and it is actually completely not related with what you have written, but unfortunately you have to write another paragraph. You can start by saying, looking at rather apart from the previous point you specify it, now the reader will see that you are going something completely different from what you have been discussing. and the starting of that new paragraph tells the reader that what he's going to read is completely not related to the previous one. The length of a section, we have sections and subsections. Some of you write 1-2 sentences under a section. Others write a short paragraph as a section and they go to the next section. Please, a paragraph cannot make a section. One short paragraph cannot make a section. At least 2-3 paragraphs can make a section, but one short paragraph cannot stand alone as a section unless that section is unique for a given point you are writing out. Otherwise, I expect you to have more than one paragraph to be a section or a subsection. The length of a paragraph depends on how much you are writing about a point. So let's not say how long can a paragraph be. It depends on how you have structured the point you are discussing. But a paragraph that covers the whole page, I think it is too long. I don't think you can spend the whole page discussing one point in its totality. So you can tactfully see how to break it into shorter paragraphs. When to break a sentence into another sentence, that one depends on the senses or the points that are carried in a sentence. So you can't say now how short or how long should the sentence be. Don't compound a sentence with a number of issues or a number of points. You split that into 2 or 3 sentences. When you are writing, always keep in mind the problem statement, the objectives, the hypothesis, and the overall title. Whatever you write, remind yourself about the problem statement, about the objectives, the hypothesis, and the overall title. If you don't do that, you'll find that you are writing some stuff that are outside your study. So you should also keep within the scope of each section or subsection title. Here I'm saying you avoid the mismatch. You find somebody has a section title or subsection title, and when you read it, there is some stuff you expect to read in the text that follows. But unfortunately, you find what this person is writing has no connection with the section title. So there is a mismatch. Always avoid that. Even for tables, you read a table title, and what you expect to see in the table is completely different from what the table title says. So that is a mismatch that you should always check and avoid. Next, you must avoid repetitions, redundant words, and statements. If you have written something, why do you repeat it? So avoid repetitions. There are words that are not adding any value, avoid them. And there are statements that don't add any new information, also avoid them. We are not interested in a bulky document, and then it motivates you to make repetitions and add redundant statements. Please remove them. The use of rare phrases should be avoided. Use them as rarely as possible. There are rare phrases such as to mention but a few, don't use such a phrase so commonly because it is a rare phrase. And avoid monotony either in the way you start a sentence, or a paragraph, or a section. For example, there could be sections on results, and every section you start it with results on fertilizer use are presented in table 4. Then you go to another paragraph. Results of use of labor are presented in table 5. Then you go ahead in other paragraphs. Results on rainfall amount are presented in table 6. That kind of monotony, try to avoid that. Every paragraph is starting with however, nevertheless. That is monotony. Furthermore. So avoid that kind of monotony. You try to vary your writing style. When you are explaining and discussing tables and figures, please do that without making repetitions. Here, what I mean, you have your results summarized in either tables or figures. And then when you are writing about these results, you are exactly duplicating what the tables are already saying. Rather than explaining and discussing the results, you are busy opening up the table into text form. I don't know that you have understood me on that. And
Pardon.
Has anybody understood me?
Prof, pardon me on that
Yes.
point.
Yes.
Whoever has understood can explain. Nelson.
There are cases when we have tables and instead of someone explaining as to why the information is like the way it is in the table, the person instead describes the information in the table without giving what exactly it is trying to imply.
That's right. One. You have results in the table. For example, the table is talking about the kind of farmers involved in the crop production, and the results indicate that summarized in the table that 40% of the farmers are females. Now in the text, you again write that 40% of the farmers are females. That is already indicated in the table. So in the text, what you need to tell us is why the 40% are females, or what it implies to have 40% of the farmers females. But if we just say 40% of the farmers are females, as shown in table 1, it's already there. So what new information are you giving? You are only repeating what is already summarized in the table. But just tell us what that means. Whether the figure is so high or so low, tell us that. But rather than telling us what the table is already telling us. This applies to the figures, this applies to the tables. And before you present a table or a figure, make sure that in the text preceding this table or figure has a reference to that table or figure. Don't write a text and without referring the reader and you just draw a table or a figure. And then the reader just bumps into a table. You need to have referred the reader to the table. 50% of the farmers are females, as shown in table 1. Then you draw table 1. Okay? There was no application of fertilizers in bracket figure 2. Then you draw figure 2. But don't wait and just draw the table or figure without referring the reader to that table. And maybe you do that later after you have drawn. That is wrong. It should be before you draw it. And once you refer the reader to that table or figure, don't wait and present the table much later. It should be closer to the area where you have referred to it. But later, if the table is on page 5, you can always, even when you're on page 60, refer to that table on page 5, no problem. But in the first appearance, make sure that where you refer the reader to that table, then the table comes so immediately. Don't put it far ahead. The citation of literature and how it is cited in different sections and chapters, I think we talked about that. When you are using tables, and I think most of you will have a number of tables in your thesis, each table must have a title, definitely. And this title should be self-explanatory and it should be precise. It shouldn't be long. A short title, but self-explanatory. Self-explanatory meaning that if I read the title of the table, I should have a good guess of what this table is talking about, or the content of the table. Should have a good guess. But you find somebody writing a title and you go to the table, the content of the table is talking about something different. So take time and make sure that this title is self-explanatory and it tallies with the content in that table. Do not put a full stop on the title. Whether it is the thesis title on the title page, whether it is a title of a table or title of a figure or the title of a section or subsection, please do not put a full stop at the end. The title is not a sentence. It is only a sentence that qualifies to have a full stop. So these titles are not sentences. Don't put full stops, please. When you go to, when you are drawing a table will have columns and rows. And the column will have what they call descriptors or headings. And these headings of the rows and the columns should be very clear. If they are not clear, then nobody will understand the content of the table. So the column and row descriptors or headings should be very clear. Yes, I had already mentioned that the title and the content must match. avoid any mismatch in that. Then in entering the figures in the table, they should be aligned. We'll show an example. We have, I have example of bad tables. For example, this cannot stand as a table. The title of the table is, this is table 2, and it is about the person who mainly collects water for home consumption. The title is okay, but look at the table. There is a person who collects water at the first column, and the second column is the percentage of these people. We have wife constituting 61.3%, and then children constituting 38.7%. The total, of course, gives you 100%. This table is not a good table because the message it is carrying can be written in just one short sentence. So you don't need a table for that. So avoid these very weak tables. Just one sentence will tell you that as 61% of water collectors are wives and the other 39% are children. Just one short sentence. You don't need a table for this kind of information. This is just an example. In the table, we need consistency in the 1,000 separators. Do you know the 1,000 separators?
No.
No, Prof.
Yes, we do, Prof.
Yes, Prof, we do know that one.
Can you spell out one? Those who say you know, please give an example.
Prof, for example, if you're writing 1,000, you can put 1, comma, then plus the 3 zeros. That's the 1,000 separator, Prof.
All right. Think you have heard those who didn't know. So be consistent with that 1,000 separators. Don't separate some figures and you don't separate others. Be consistent. We also need consistency in decimal places, 0.24, then 0.1, then 0.623. You are mixing 3 decimal places, 2 decimal places, 1 decimal place in one table. Be consistent and choose either consistently 1 decimal place or 2 decimal places or 3 decimal places, but not a mixture of all those. The other point is on the table grids. When you are structuring a table, for example, in a Word document, it gives you a table with cells separated by so many lines, the column lines and the row lines. Those are the grids I'm talking about. We don't need all those grids. We need the very top line, the very top horizontal line, and that's where you put the column headings and then another line. So 2 lines at the top, and what we need next is the 3rd line at the bottom of the table. Only those 3 lines are enough. 2 at the top for the headers, and then 1 at the bottom. The rest of the grids you should remove them. Minimum and maximum size of the table. We must have a minimum size of a table and perhaps a maximum size of a table. Any table that has 1 row, a table with 1 row is discouraged. do not allow yourself to draw a table with one row. For example, this table, I can say it has one row because if the wives constitute 61% and the others constitute the rest, then I can say it has one row. But anyway, these are two, but still they don't make a good table. So these rows are too few for a good table. So minimum, don't allow a table with one row, and maximum, try as much as possible to have a table that fits on a page. Sometimes the table is too big, I can appreciate, but try as much as possible to limit your tables on page. If it is too big and overflows, no problem, but having tried to fit it on one page. And if it is too wide, you can, instead of going out of the margins, the left and the right margins, you just put that page in a landscape format, not portrait, but landscape, such that it fits within the margins. And when you are binding your book, the binding margin is where the title is for a landscape page. Where the title of the table is on a landscape page is the binding margin, not the other way around. Where it's not clear, you stop me. That's why I keep pausing. In those tables, you avoid the repetitions. Here I give an example of a table with the frequencies and then with percentages. One column gives frequencies, another column gives percentages. For me, I take that as a repetition. Because if I have percentages, I can compute frequencies. Or if I have frequencies, I can compute percentages. So one of the two is enough for me. I don't see why you should repeat the two. Then there is a table where you find you are trying to show the level of significance. We normally use asterisks. One asterisk stands for 10%. Two asterisks stand for 5% level of significance, and three asterisks stand for 1% of significance. Now, you find somebody with a table with those asterisks and also a column of p-values. That is a repetition. Once you have p-values, you don't need the asterisks because a p-value clearly indicates the level of significance. If you want to use asterisks, then you don't need the column for p-value. They give the same information, only that the p-value is more informative than the asterisks. So for my students, I normally prefer having p-value to asterisks. And if you have got the table from some other source, it is not your own data, your own drawing, then indicate the source at the bottom of the table. That is, you show the reference. Source would be Andama in bracket 2014. So that one knows that this data in the table is not yours, but you got it from some other source. Here I give examples of faulty tables. And in this table, table 1, socioeconomic characteristics. This title in the first place is faulty because it is incomplete. Socioeconomic characteristics, what is that about? It is not self-explanatory. That is fault number 1. Fault number 2, there is a full stop at the end. I have marked it red. That is a fault. There shouldn't be a full stop. Fault number 3, these are column row descriptors, and these are column descriptors. Now, you see in this descriptor mean or mean age of HH, what does HH mean? This is an abbreviation you have created yourself to mean household, but it is a non-standard abbreviation, so it will not be understood by some readers. So this is the fault. You should write mean age of household head. Okay. And the other fault here is also mean household size should be, it shouldn't be HH, but you write it something that is understood. Looking at the decimal places, for example, under mean age of mean HH size, under cotton, you see we have 3 decimal places, 6.045. But under rice, we have 2 decimal places, 5.80. So that is a fault. You should be consistent in the number of decimal places. And then amount of school fees, I put there question marks because the units of measurement are not indicated. What is this amount? Are they dollars? Are they shillings? If they are shillings, are they per term? Are they per year? So it is not clear. So that is a fault. And then under cotton, we see some figure 120000 something. And under rice, we have 2,151,000 with 1,000 separators. But under cotton, there are no 1,000 separators. So that is another fault. Mean yield, I'm also putting question marks because it is lacking units of measurement. Are they in tons per hectare? Are they in the bags per acre? Are they in what? So there's a fault there. And under cotton, we have 3, whatever it is, and under rice, we have 14. But you see, they are not aligned. They are not in the same line. So we need to align those entries. Are we still together?
Yes, Prof, we are following.
Okay. Now let's go.
Yes.
Let's go down the column of cotton. Under the column of cotton, we have 49.70, 6.045, and 1,200,000, and then 3.00. But you see, they are not aligned. The first entry is in its position. The second one is alone. Now, if you remember the abacus, where you have the ones, the 10, the thousands, the hundreds, they are all lined up. So even here, I expect the tenth or the thousandth and the one and the hundredth. Rachel, mute. Rachel, if you're still here, you can mute. Okay. So what I mean here, we need to align these figures down the column such that the ones, the 10, the hundreds, the tenths, the hundreds are all aligned up such that I can quickly sum or add down the column. I don't know whether you have got me on that.
Prof, we are following.
You look at the T value. The T values are well aligned. If I quickly want to add, I know I will get 3 plus 2 plus 2, 6 plus 0 plus 9, 1 plus 0 plus 0, 2 plus 9 plus 5, then 0 plus 1 plus 0. That is very quick, and that's how alignment should be. But for cotton, I don't know whether you should add 0 to 5 or whether you should add 7 to 5 or whether you should add 9 to 5. It is zigzag. It should be justified to the right. For all the entries, they should be justified to the right. That's when you can well align the entries. And finally, you see in the table you have asterisks as well as the p-value. And that's why I was saying the asterisks are irrelevant. They don't add anything when you have a p-value. So in that case, you remove the asterisks and just keep the p-value plain. This other table comes back as a float one. You see, we have the first column as who collects water, and the second column is in percent. Now, since the heading is already in percent, this other 61.3, you don't have to put that percentage mark. So that because the heading of that column already indicates that. This is another faulty table because it has one column, rather one row. Percentage of farmers with livestock. Either you have livestock, that is a yes, or you don't have livestock, that is a no. Now, if it is the percentage of farmers with livestock, and I just type yes, 57%, automatically, the other 43% do not have livestock. So the no line, that row for no, is redundant. So I can even delete it without losing any information, because even if it is not there, the table shows that yes, 57 farmers have livestock. So the no row is redundant, is useless. You remove it. Okay? Now, after removing it, then you remain with a table with one row. And we said you can't a table with one row. So it collapses to be. And therefore, you write this information in text form, no table. Use of graphs and diagrams. The principle is similar to the what we have gone through for tables, but we add on that you use graphs or diagrams that are relevant, not just because they look fancy. For example, you need to know when to use a line graph and when to use a bar graph. It's not just saying, the line graph looks nice, so let me draw it. Or a bar graph is fantastic, let me draw it. There are situations where a line graph is relevant and a bar graph is not, and vice versa. So you need to know when to have a line graph and when to have a bar graph. For example, if you are presenting, if you are summarizing temperature data in a graph, do you use a line graph or a bar graph? Temperature over the last 12 hours. Do you use a line graph or a bar graph?
Line graph.
Line graph.
And when you are presenting rainfall over the last 12 days, do you use a line graph or a bar graph?
A bar graph.
Okay, very good. A line graph is suitable for the temperature data because at any single time, there will be some temperature. Now, if you present temperature data in a bar graph, it means there are some points in time when there is no temperature. It's not continuous, and temperature can't be discrete, it's continuous. Likewise, rainfall, you can't present rainfall data in a line graph. It means that it is raining non-stop for the last 12 days. Instead, you use a bar graph, which shows the disconnection between different times. There are some days when there is rainfall, there are some hours when there is no rainfall. So it's not how the graph looks like, but how relevant it is. The case of titles is as for the tables, the principle is the same, only that the titles for graphs is put at the bottom of the graph, whereas for the tables, it is at the top of the table. The shades. When you are shading your bars or your lines in a graph or in a diagram, you should select distinct colors or distinct shades, such that the 2 points you are presenting are distinctly different. Don't pick dark red and then dark maroon as 2 colors. They are the same to some people who don't quickly differentiate between the colors, especially I hear men are colorblind. So help these men to give them colors that are very distinct or shades that are very distinct. And in some cases, shading becomes better than coloring. The shades will come out distinctly compared to coloring, and more importantly, when you print in black and white. If there are colors and it is blue and green, and you print it in black and white, they look the same. But if there are shades, even if you print in black and white, they remain distinct. So take note of the shadings and coloring. Make sure that if it is a graph, the axis, the y and the y-axis and the x-axis are clearly labeled, because without those labels, nobody will understand what the graph is about. And then you avoid crowded graphs. A graph is supposed to illustrate the point very clearly. Now, when you overcrowd it, then it becomes unattractive and its objective disappears. So always avoid crowded graphs. Don't put too much information in one single graph. You rather make 2 or 3 graphs than crowding one graph with so many data points. This is an example of a faulty graph. There are so many faults here. One, I don't see the title of this graph, which is expected at the bottom of this table. That one is, I think that's fault number 1. Fault number 2, the x-axis and the y-axis are not labeled. I don't know what is on the horizontal axis. I don't know what is on the vertical axis. So I can't make sense out of this graph. I don't know what it is. much as I see maize, groundnut, and rice millet, I don't understand what the figure is about because of lacking the axis labels. The other fault I see is when you look at these words at the bottom of the bar, there is season 1, there is whatever like looking like season 2 and something like season 3. I think this person meant season 1, season 2, and season 3. But you see the mistakes made in writing those words. So that is another fault. The other fault, these grids, you see those vertical lines, we don't need them there. They should be eliminated such that we have a plain background without those grids. For your consultancy report, the client might need them. But for your thesis, you don't need those grids. Remove them. And when you are drawing a bar graph, the first bar should be the tallest and the last bar should be the shortest. So you arrange your data set such that you get a graph that has the first bar as the tallest and the last bar as the shortest. Look at this called season 1, a group of bars. You see this blue and maroon and green at first set of bars in season 1. Are we there?
Yes.
Yes, we are here.
Yes, Prof. We are listening.
Okay. So you need to arrange your data such that the maroon bar appears first, followed by the blue bar, and lastly the green bar, in that order. We are starting with the tallest, then the second tallest, and the shortest, in that order for that season 1. And because the data set will also have data for season 2 and season 3, then the order that you pick for this first season will be the order followed in the other seasons. Meaning that if for season 1 we say maroon is first, in season 2 maroon will be first, whether shortest or tallest in that season. And in season 3, still maroon will be first. So season 1, maroon, blue, and green. Season 2, maroon, blue, and green. Season 3, maroon, blue, and green. I think it is clear. The order of the other groups depends on the order of the first group. Whether tallest first or shortest last, no problem, so long as the first group is arranged in that order.
Prof, come again, because you had said you start with the tallest.
Yes.
It's a bit confusing me. I thought that maybe for the 3 seasons, you maintain the tallest, the intermediate, and then the shortest.
No, it will be complicated for you. You have a data set. So you just start, you arrange only one, and the others will follow suit.
So how? I'm not getting how it will follow suit then.
If you have a spreadsheet with this data and you arrange it based on this first season, the others will follow that order. It doesn't mean that whatever value the tallest is ground nuts in season 1, right? The second is maize. The third is rice millet, in that order. Now for season 2, you are putting them on the same bar face, a graph face, season, it means your data set, you arrange it starting with groundnuts, followed by maize, and lastly rice millet. That is how you have arranged your data set. So it doesn't mean that in season 2, the highest will be groundnuts. No. For example, here it is maize, but you are following the order you created for the first season. Okay.
Yeah, so what do you do if some of these illustrations are generated by maybe the software you're using to analyze? For example,
but that's where you get it from. You are not doing it manually. You only arrange your data starting with the highest for this season, and then the same order follows for the other seasons. You're not doing it manually, you are sorting them by order. Starting with the groundnuts, followed by maize, and lastly rice millet. Following that order for all the seasons. And you plot them and get that kind of ordered graph. Okay?
Yes, it's okay.
Yes, Prof.
This is another faulty graph. This is yield of selected food crops in different seasons. The title reads okay, but it is in the wrong place. First of all, I don't want you to put the title within the figure. It should be outside and at the bottom. Even if you put it inside the frame, but let it be at the bottom of the figure, not at the top. But if you are drawing it by Excel, it might automatically put it at that point. It is up to you now to shift it to the right position. The x-axis is a crop, that is okay. The y-axis is the yield in tons per hectare, that is okay. But these grids should be removed. We have season 1, season 2, and season 3 as the legend, that is okay. And you see how they are arranged. This is the same data I used to generate these two graphs. But for this one, I ordered them such that the tallest appears first, and then the second tallest and the shortest. Now from this order, then the other bars will follow the order of what appeared in the first set of bars. Blue, maroon, and green. Blue, maroon, and green, whether tallest or shortest. But I'm following the order I established for groundnuts for the 3 seasons. So that one is okay. But the grids and the position of the table are faulty. This figure.
Prof, I beg your pardon on the title being up.
Should be at the bottom. Should be at the bottom of the figure.
And not within. You said not within. There I got lost.
You can take it outside the frame of this figure. Or if you are to keep it there, it should be below this word crop. The x-axis should be below the crop. Can be within, but you may put it outside the frame. It's up to you, but at least let it be at the bottom of the figure.
Prof, if it's secondary data, where do you put the source?
You put it after the title. Figure 12, yield of selected food crops in different seasons at the bottom, and thereafter you put the source. not the source and then the figure title. Then here we have a 40 pie chart. This is figure 15, maize yield. That title should be at the bottom. Number 2, it is not self-explanatory. We don't know what it means. So you should make that title self-explanatory. This is for 2 seasons, season 1 and season 2. These are just 2 points. Season 1 is 35 kilograms. Season 2 is 54.2 kilograms. The decimal places are inconsistent. In season 1, you have 0 decimal places. In season 2, you have 1 decimal place. So you should be consistent with the decimal places. Number 3, these 2 points can't make a pie chart. Just collapse this figure into 1 sentence by writing that the yield of maize in season 1 was 35 kilograms, while it was 54.2 whatever kilograms in season 2. You don't need to waste time and space drawing this figure. It collapses into a sentence. So these 2 points cannot make a pie chart. 2 points cannot make a table. So similarly, this is a redundant figure that you can convert into a text.
Opened my mind was I think
You have a question? This graph also lacks the title. I don't see a title anywhere. The axes are labeled but lacks a title. And the scale here, the scale on the y-axis has inconsistencies in decimal places. There are some round figures, then there are decimal places. You need to consistently work on that, such that the decimal places are consistent all through. There are these types of vertical, rather horizontal graphs. I think you have come across such examples. Bar graphs that are horizontal. When you are drawing a horizontal bar graph, please arrange your data such that the longest bar or the tallest bar, whichever you want to call it, appears at the very top, and the shortest bar appears at the bottom of that axis. Like mine is, the tallest bar or longest bar is at the top, and the shortest is at the bottom. I hope that one is clear.
Yeah, it's clear.
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay. If it is clear, the exception is when now you have these legumes, cereals.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, what if it is grouped like the one we looked at?
Like this one?
Yes.
The same thing. The same thing, this groundnut entry appears first and at the top, and with the inverted now both is horizontal. Season 1, which is blue, is at the top, followed by season 2 and then season 3. Then the others will follow. It is basically like getting this graph and tilt it through, is it 90 degrees or just tilt it clockwise for like 90 degrees, 90 degrees or 180 degrees.
It's 90.
Yes, so basically that. Clockwise, not anti-clockwise.
Okay.
So it is the same. So what I wanted to mention is that these are different food types. You may have another component or another item called and others. Okay? Others. You have seen that kind of data or graphs. The others, much as you have arranged these in the order of starting with the longest to the shortest, if there is a component for others, that one automatically becomes the very last close to the origin. Not fish and seafoods, but it should be others, however long the bars will be. Whether they cover up to 50%, but it is labeled others, it will be at the very bottom. Even these ones, if we had another item called others, it will appear after rice, at the very last one. Others should not be mixed within these other bars, which are clear. It can't be at the beginning. It can't be in the middle. It must be at the end, whether tallest or shortest. So here others would be after fish and seafoods. That's where you put others, whether the longest or not. But if it can't be longest, because if it is longest, then what have you described? And you're calling it others. What are they? So you add a legend where applicable. Legend is like a key. You avoid overcrowding the graph. So you mind the size. We have seen that there should be minimum and maximum. You can't have 2 points to make like a pie chart or even a bar graph. You indicate the source where applicable, and also you avoid repetition in explanation or in the discussion. What is already summarized in the figure, you don't have to repeat it exactly in text form, like we said for tables. The other issues are equations. Those of you who are writing equations, please don't just type lousy equations. I encourage you to use equation editor. It is there provided in Microsoft Word. Use equation editor to write your equations. That's when they look smart. And in that equation, you define all the symbols that you use. Don't leave any symbol undefined. And the numerical figures in the text that are less than 10, it's advisable that you write them in words. 6 cows. Hey, Charity, what are you drawing? 6 cows. I expect you to write SIX rather than numerical 6. Words that figures that are less than 10, it's better you write them in words. And when you are starting a sentence, don't start with a numerical figure like 3 animals. You write THREE, animals. When you are starting a sentence, please don't type a numerical figure. I don't know whether that one is clear. Starting a sentence with a figure. Hello?
Prof, we are hearing you. You are
Yeah,
loud.
but did you get the point?
Yes, Prof.
Yes, we did.
Okay. Don't start a sentence with a numerical figure. Put that figure in words. The reporting language, there is where you need to use passive or active. And once you use one, when you decide to use passive, you use it consistently. When you decide to use active, you use it consistently. Passive, for example, is stating like it was observed that is a passive language. Contrary to say, I observed that is active language. So you need to pick one of the two. But for presenting results and methods, I prefer passive language. Matching table of contents. You have to draw a table of contents at the beginning of the thesis, and this table of contents should match what is in the body. Then you add acknowledgements. Here you thank people who contributed to your thesis, but don't thank those you paid for the services they rendered. If people collected data for you and you paid them, you don't have to put them in acknowledgements. And then there is a page for declaration that this work is original, written by you and owned by you and submitted for that special purpose of the degree award, and has never been submitted elsewhere. Writing references, I think we took time to discuss how to cite references in the text and how to write them in the reference list, emphasizing that all the citations that appear in the reference list must have been cited in the text, and whatever is cited in the text must appear in the reference list, showing the authors first, and using surnames rather than other given names. And then the other given names are all abbreviated. We had special cases, you remember. You separate the author's names with the comma, or can even leave the comma, but be consistent. And then the and absender, pick one and be consistent with it. You've add the year of publication after the name, and then you can put the year in bracket or no bracket, but be consistent. Then add the title of the publication, the publishing house, the city of publication, and the page numbers or number of pages. For a journal, you indicate the name of the journal after the title, the volume of the journal, and the pages of the article in the journal. And where there are no pages, and if it's online, you indicate the DOI, the digital object identifier, and you arrange the references in alphabetical order, unless otherwise, unless the where you are submitting the write-up requires some other order. But if that is not indicated, you arrange the references in alphabetical order. Okay, I have some cases in the chat that I can't hear you too late. Please check your network is clear. That is the response from a colleague. Okay, any question?
No question is Prof.
Yes, Prof. I could have one.
Yes, go ahead and ask.
Yeah, there is where you displayed a table, and it was a faulty table, I think. That one there. Am I at leverage to that HH, the household? if I put first household in full and then I put HH in brackets for the first time, and then the rest of the times down here, am I at leverage to use the HH?
Yes, yes, you can. You can comfortably do that. Or at the bottom of this table, where you see those asterisk, you can put the meaning of HH. HH is household. Y is mean. So you can put some notes at the bottom of that table.
Prof.
Yeah.
Sorry to take you back, but I have an issue that I really didn't understand very well on the problem statement. Like when you're stating the problem statement, do you have to put references that are really supporting your problem? That one I really didn't get it very well.
It is actually a must. It is a must because the first part of the problem statement is putting the topic in context by telling us what exists, what is the situation. So what is the situation is sourced from existing literature. And once you quote it, you have to indicate the source.
Prof, me, I don't remember what you talked about, the margins.
The margin of the page, there is a left margin, right margin on every page, top margin and bottom margin. So you write your information in the middle of those four margins. If, for example, it is 2 centimeters at the bottom, 2 centimeters at the bottom, at the top, and the left, and the left, your text will be typed and to fit within those margins. But when you draw a table and it looks to be a big table, there is a tendency of pulling it such that it goes beyond the margins, especially the left margin or the right margin. I am saying you respect the margins, let the table of fit within the margins. Anything else or we close?
Prof, I wanted to ask about the very large table you were talking about. What if it is so large and reducing the font size can help in making it fit? Is it okay to reduce the font size?
Yes, you can reduce the font size from 12 to 11 and minimum to 10.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, excuse me, Professor.
Yes.
Can you please shed more light on the policy implications vis-a-vis the recommendations?
Policy implication, having got your conclusion, what does it imply as far as policy issues are concerned? What is the relevance of your finding or your conclusions on policy? Or what needs to be addressed using political means to address the challenge you have identified?
Okay, thank you.
And incidentally, your policy implication could serve as your recommendations, depending on the nature of the study. You may find that you don't have a section for recommendation, but you have a section for policy implications.
Hello, Prof.
Yes, Christine.
Does that part of the showing the policy implication from your conclusions or results apply to all the types of research done? Let me say, if at all someone is working on maybe fertilizer application, how it affects yield, like do you have to also put it in there?
Not necessarily. You can have the recommendations.
Okay.
If there is no
Yes.
other, yes.
No, I have a question. Actually, it's not a question, but a request. Our network has been on and off, and would request that you share with us some of the slides that we can make some review.
I think that's not a question.
Yes, it isn't a question.
Okay. Anything else?
Excuse me, Professor.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine is in relation to the problem statement. What could be the minimum number of references we are supposed to include in the problem statement? Thank you.
There is no limited number, so long as what you are citing is relevant. Even the entire text, there's no minimum or maximum number of references to cite. Just cite what is relevant. Leave out what is not relevant. So you don't have to count how many, 1, 2, 3, no.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we go for lunch and we meet tomorrow at Cabanyolo.
All right, Prof. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
Nice lunch. Thank you, Prof.